Hey, this is Notser, and we're talking main battery reload. This consumable has required a lot of tweaking, and one of the adjustments is the main battery reload on Charles Martel and Saint-Louis. Initially, they planned on nerfing it by 2 seconds from 10 seconds to 12, and adding the main battery reload consumable. The DPM loss would be extensive, but the situational effectiveness would have gone up. If a target was broadside, if the target had just used damage control, they could punish it. However, the player base, and myself included, it just felt like 12 seconds was a huge punishment for a very small window that this consumable fulfilled. Wargaming have walked a little bit back on that nerf, and they now are going to implement a 1 second nerf instead of 2 seconds. So it's going to go from 10 seconds, which is live, to 11 seconds in 7.8 when they introduce the main battery reload part of the French cruiser line. And I'm really excited to play through these. I feel like they're going to have so much more value, and you're not giving up quite as much as initially it looked like. I think it's going to be great, and I can't wait. Unfortunately, they're also introducing a ship that feels incredibly powerful right now. Jean Bar, a battleship premium tier 9. It uses the main battery reload, and oh boy does it use it. It's so powerful. Wargaming's not really that comfortable with the current state of this ship's design. They plan to implement some nerfs from the version that you've probably seen on CC channels, my channel, or read about. Jean Bar is losing that special heal that has a 40-second recharge. It is on the Massachusetts, and it's also on Gascon. Instead, you're getting the base 80-second reload that's on pretty much every battleship in the game. It is a big nerf to the ability to weather the high explosive storm. You've got to play a little bit more cautiously. I'm a little bit disappointed in this change. I feel like this heal is great to keep battleships engaged in combat, and taking that away is going to make them play a little bit more passively than they did previously. But I understand this ship receiving nerfs. I just wish that wasn't nerfed. They are also changing the main battery reload. They are giving 1 extra charge, but this addition does not come without a nerf, and the nerf is significant. They are changing the cooldown from 80 seconds on the main battery reload for Jean Bar to 120 seconds, so adding 40 seconds to the recharge, which feels fair. I have played countless games in this ship, and it has felt like 80 seconds was just right. It was perfect. I could be super aggressive. I could push into situations where I knew I could shoot my way out because the cooldown was coming up. Not the case with 120 seconds. You really need to consider, do I have enough time for this to come off a cooldown? Is the enemy going to make a mistake? If the enemy makes a mistake with this main battery reload consumable, it's done. Absolutely done. I did 240,000 damage in I think like 10 minutes. I had a ton of broadside targets, and the 380mm did not matter at all. So I think it definitely needed a nerf, and I think the activation cooldown, I think that's fair. The cooldown before you can activate again, it's definitely a valid nerf. I have no problem with this whatsoever. Honestly, I felt like it needed it. I don't know if this is enough to compensate for just the situational increase with main battery reload on a battleship. It's godlike. You should watch my, I think it's the untitled video if you haven't, and you want to see that in action. Oh, it's just a sight to behold. Now, along the nerfs, we're getting secondary increased range from 5 to 7 kilometers, which is great. It allows you to potentially go a secondary build. I love secondary builds. I will definitely check that out. One thing that's kind of concerning is that Wargaming have announced a Tier 10 French battleship, a premium Tier 10 French battleship. It is known as Begonia. This is going to be a Alsace-esque battleship. So it's going to have that same layout, the same aircraft carrier, the same ship design, just with main battery reload added to its consumable. That's a pretty big increase in potential firepower. 12 guns with main battery reload. They are 380mm, but there's plenty of targets that show their side. This will punish cruisers, battleships, destroyers, aircraft. It punishes everyone. And 12 guns is a lot better than 8. Now, I feel like it's probably bad. This is probably too much. I don't know that the back gun is going to be quite as effective as people would hope. You're going to have to be very wide in your angling to really bring it to bear and have it full force. I don't know that that's going to happen that often. I'm going to be completely honest. You also have to target a lot of ships that have way more armor than a tier 9 would experience, or a tier 8. 380 is a very low caliber, so you're going to have to live and die on superstructure and broadside targets. Begonia, I can't wait to test it. It does look very bad, as I've said this before. It looks very bad when you consider Alsace received nerfs, reload Sigma. We're getting a tier 10 Alsace, which is getting the main battery reload. We also have a tier 9 premium, Jean Bar, which was introduced in the same patch that the Alsace received its nerfs. I just don't like that. Even if it's a legitimate nerf, I feel like they should have spread it out so it wasn't so bad. It looks very bad to me as a player and as a content creator. It just looks like you wanted an excuse for players to have interest in other premium tier 9 and tier 10 French battleships other than the mainline Alsace. That probably isn't true, but that's what it looks like wargaming. So if this ship has better accuracy, better reload, also has the main battery consumable, and the only thing you have to give up is a little bit of hit points at tier 10, well, it's going to feel a little unfair that it gets to maintain its power at tier 10 and also get the main battery reload. If the main battery reload wasn't attached to this tier 10 version of Alsace, I would be like, yeah, it needs a little bit more accuracy and yeah, it needs a better reload. But if it has better accuracy, better reload, and also it's going to have main battery reload, we're going to need to talk wargaming. I think you need to consider, maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe we shouldn't introduce something that's just better in every way than the tier 9 version. Now, I do love the tier 9 so much that I would be willing to see a tier 10. I felt like the Republic was just so different from the Alsace and Richelieu, Lyon, that it's cool, but it's so different. And having a tier 10 version of a ship that I love at tier 9 is great, but I just worry that it's being made for the wrong reasons. It's being made to exploit the fact that people like this design. Maybe we could make a tier 10 version, see how that goes. I don't want it to break any rules. I also don't like that tier 9 seems to be where we dump ships and we just allow it to be really imbalanced overall. Why don't we put as much effort in making sure that tier 9 is balanced with all of these premiums coming online and not focus so much on releasing a tier 10 version where we're moving towards more tier 10 activity requirement, clan, ranked, legendaries, missions, you name it, it all encourages tier 10 play. Maybe we shouldn't go full on with all of these tier 10s. Let's just make sure that tier 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2 are also as balanced at tier 10. Just my feeling on it. And speaking of tier 10 ships that are going to be introduced, Stalingrad. This ship has had a love-hate relationship with the community, and it's going to have even more because the version that I played and tested and felt like it was very strong is getting buffed. It's getting the addition of defensive AA, and I think it's a weird one where like specific auras are turned on. It's also going to receive a better concealment rating. Right now, I think it's like 18.75 kilometers, and it's going down to 18.1 kilometers. So it's a nice, sizable buff. It should make it be at least in the same ballpark as other battleships. Yeah, other battleships. It's not a battleship. Yeah, right. I think it might be a little bit too effective at replacing the Moskva. Yes, it's a bigger ship, but it brings a bigger caliber. It has more health. It has the ability to mitigate a little bit more damage overall than the Moskva, and the most important thing, it is really fulfilling a little bit more than just a cruiser. It feels more like a battle cruiser. It's in between. It doesn't take a battleship slot, so for clan, it has more value than the Moskva if you're looking for something to fulfill a battleship role, and you've already slotted in your Conqueror, your Montana, your Yamato, whatever you happen to run as a clan. I think something like the Stalingrad's going to have more value, so I'm a little concerned that it's just going to find its way in competitive and it's always going to be the go-to. That's what it feels like to me. Anyone who has it will appreciate it. I'll test that version, of course, and let you know how it works out, but it just feels like maybe it's getting a little bit too much effectiveness. Its accuracy is very nice. I know you... Oh my god, the Sigma, 2.65. So the number isn't very important. You need to consider where the Sigma lies. What Wargaming has attempted to do is set, 3 or 4 parameters for dispersion that Sigma can work off of. You've got a different Sigma for destroyers, cruisers, battleships. There's also different Sigma for the Graf Spee. The Graf Spee operates somewhere in between a cruiser and a battleship in accuracy. So therefore, it has a different Sigma value to compensate for this weird in-between design that they're going for. And that is exactly what they're using on the Stalingrad. The 2.65 is a giant number, right? It's incredibly accurate for the Graf Spee design. If you were to go towards a cruiser, that number would never be in 2.65 because it would never maintain that dispersion where Sigma is enhancing it further. So the only confusing part of this is that they're using a part of the Sigma value that they've never used and they've never explained exactly how it works. It's just enhancing the grouping consistency. If you have Graf Spee levels of accuracy, it's sort of a battleship, battle cruiser, then it's appropriate there. But it's absolutely very accurate. It definitely feels better than a battleship. It's not quite as consistently accurate as cruisers are, but it shouldn't be. It has a much larger dispersion area that it has to consider. So overall, positive change to the French cruisers. Jean Bar getting nerfed. It's definitely fair. The Tier 10 creation of an Alsace with main battery, I'm concerned. And the Stalingrad getting defensive fire, better concealment. I'm very afraid that this ship is just going to be... If it's even competitive, I think that's maybe too much because it's so limited. It's going to fulfill something that the others can't. And maybe it'll turn out to work out just fine. And, we're blowing this out of proportion. I just kind of feel like if the Stalingrad is anywhere remotely in the discussion, it's a concern. Now, I have heard rumors that the Stalingrad will not get a legendary, and that could be a form of compensation. If it doesn't get a legendary, well, these legendaries are designed to enhance what these ships are already really good at, and a Moskva fully enhanced with their legendary is very, very strong, terrifying, scary. If the Stalingrad never gets something like that, well, it can't be made into an even more threatening force for their team. So I think everything's cool. I'm going to try and remain optimistic over the changes. I hope everyone will have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.